Well, hello, 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 hello. Happy Shabbat. I send you peace that surpasses all understanding. I'm sliding in here trying to take on this week's message, which is coming from Nehemiah 4. And we're still in the book of Nehemiah. We're strinkling along. And today we're going to talk about, if you want something, you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to fight for the things you want in life. If anything just comes to you easy, then it may not be of God. If the adversary is not coming against you with the vision that God has given you, that vision may not have come from God. Anytime you are about to get a blessing, all hell breaks loose. Adversity, trials and tribulations, you find yourself in the middle of mess. So when the heat is turned up, just know your blessing is on the other side. That's what we're going to talk about today in Nehemiah 4. Nehemiah, people were coming against them. They were being, mocked. They were being despised, because Nehemiah had the vision to rebuild the wall of the city of Jerusalem. And when people know that you got the vision of God, the favor of God, they're going to come against you. So let's get started. We're going to read through the word today. Let me see. We got about 23 verses. So let's begin. Verse 1. But it came to pass that when Sanballat heard that we builded the wall, he was wroth, and took great indignation and mocked the Jews. Okay, Sanballat, the man who was laughing, and with the Ammonites and everything, they was coming against Nehemiah because he told them what he was going to do. Going to build the wall, that surrounded this God city, the city of Jerusalem. They didn't want him to do it. First of all, they didn't believe in him. They didn't believe that they could complete such a daunting task. But when God is behind you, you can do anything. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, as long as you walking in Christ. That's the thing. You don't just know about Christ. You got to walk in Christ, which means you got to be walking in a way that he can be within you. He ain't gonna be in no sin. Christ is the Spirit of God. It's the Holy Spirit. He's not going to rest, rule, and abide in your heart if it's full of sin. So when you got these leaders or somebody that you see doing something, that they ain't supposed to do, hanging out somewhere they ain't supposed to hang out, maybe at the bars or whatever, and then they want to come preach a message, that message ain't come from Christ. He don't get saved overnight and then, do what he want during the week. So a person that's walking in the will of our Father, in the Spirit of the Lord, walking in the fruits of the Spirit, those are the people you need to pay attention to. And like I say, even with that, discern the Spirit, because sometimes the enemy can just be quiet. And in that quiet, you'll find peace. In the silence, you'll find peace. And you'll find that peace because as long as they don't open their mouth, ain't no fossils going to fall out. I just threw that in there. As long as they keep their mouth quiet, how can you know? We are won by our testimonies. So when they open their mouth, if they ain't got nothing good to testify of the Lord, how you know what they're doing? How you know they coming in the name of the Lord? Anyway, like I say, Sanballat was coming against them. And they was the ones that Nehemiah said, you ain't going to have no portion. When we get done, when we reap the harvest of our due diligence, of our labor, you ain't gonna get no portion. You sitting here mocking and coming against us. You don't believe, so you won't have no portion. Everybody that riding with you ain't supposed to go with you. If they not helping you, they not supporting you, or they just using you or leaning on you, then they not supposed to be with you. Discern the Spirit. Test the Spirit by the Spirit. Make sure it's of God. Make sure they're walking in love and truth and not just walking to feed their flesh, to serve themselves. Anyway, like I say, they mock the Jews. When people see the vision of God is coming to pass in your life, you know, they feel some type of way. They may come against you. They may, you know, try to deceive you or whatever. That's when we get into verse 2. And he spake before his brethren in the army of Samaria and said, what do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which we are burned? In other words, they didn't believe that they could do this. Will they sacrifice? You know, they didn't believe in the faith that they had. They didn't believe in the endurance that they had. They didn't believe that they was actually going to bring this thing to pass, bring the vision that God had given them to pass. You know, because they looking at the strength of, you know, the Jews. They looking at the strength of Nehemiah. You know, they're not looking at the strength and the faith and the will of God. They're looking at the flesh. You know, if they're visual, they're not spiritual. They're looking all in the flesh. So they're mocking them. They're coming against them, talking about what they think they're doing. Who do they think they are? You know, they really don't believe that they can endure. When you're going through something or when you're trying to attain something, they don't think you have the passion or the fervor to complete it. Like, I've been going through trying to get this internship, trying to get licensed, be a licensed therapist since 2018. Listening to this one, listening to that one, until I finally learned I got to stop listening to everybody else. Because these people, they may know what to do, but they ain't trying to tell me what to do because they don't want me to succeed. They don't want me, because, you know, the devil trying to stop me now so he don't have to deal with me later. So you got people that'll tell you any old thing. They, you know, they get to sabotaging you. You know, I'm getting ahead of myself. We got that in here too. They get to telling you any old thing and sabotaging you, telling you one thing, and then you believe in it and going along with their word, and they telling a lie and you fall out. You know, it's been since 2018 that I stepped off that school bus trying to be a licensed therapist. You know, hit this one, that one. You know, business has been successful. Going through, you know, clients, everything going. And I found out it was pending. When I found out that, you know, there didn't wasn't enough school hours or wasn't enough this or wasn't enough that. So they said, well, you got to wait till you get this, you wait till you get that. So they found out they couldn't use me any longer. So unless it was under the table or doing something that if I got caught, you know, it would jeopardize my MPI and everything that, you know, I was trying to do in the beginning. So like I say, when people, you know, see that you trying to do something that, you know, you got to have endurance, because not only for the length of the time that you got to deal with it, but you got to have endurance for the people that's coming at you. They coming at you to sabotage you. They coming at you to try to make you stop, make you quit. They don't want to deal with you. They don't want you to have that thing that God told you to do. They don't want you to succeed. Why? Because they haven't succeeded. If they had succeeded, they wouldn't have time to be trying to figure out how to, you know, take your ankles off from under you. So you got to be able to have endurance. You got to have perseverance. You got to have long suffering. You got to have the fruits of the Spirit in order to obtain that which God has given you, or the vision that God has told you. Like Joseph, he was put in the pit and everything. You know, just because he mentioned what God said, the vision that God had gave him. His brothers, his own family, his own flesh and blood came against him and sold him out to slavery and tossed him in the pit and everything. That's why he's known to be going from the pit to the palace. So your own family will sell you out because they don't want you to do more than they do. Some of them just laying around, you know, life depressed, ain't doing nothing with themselves, and then see you get up here and you get to doing something for yourself, that makes them feel some type of way, because they look at your life and see how much more they could have done with their life. You know, it's like a spirit of reproach in them. You know, that's like a self-criticism. When they see you doing better than them or see you doing more than them, they should have got off their behind it. That's that slothful spirit. Some people are really taken aback by that slothful spirit. They get up, you know, they lay around, and before you know it, they look around, 20, 30 years done went by, and they still ain't got nowhere or done nothing that God had told them to do. They don't even they'll fulfill or complete their own dreams that they wanted to do, because They sitting around slothful. And when you realize that you 20, 30 years is gone and you still ain't began the process of doing that dream or that thing that you want to do, then you begin to feel like it's too late. You begin to feel like I'd have missed my time or missed my moment. The devil is a lie. If God told it to you, he can redeem the time. As long as you start putting one foot in front of the other and following what God say do, you can do what you're going to do. I'm 52 years old, about to be 53 in 8 days, and I'm still working to be a licensed therapist. So I'm still going to keep pounding the pavement until I ain't got no more breath in my body, and I believe God is going to grant me that. So don't let no devil in hell tell you that you cannot fulfill your dreams, and don't let yourself tell you that you cannot fulfill the dream that God has called you to fulfill. Because you got to remember, he created you before the foundation of the world. He put in you that desire in you. So therefore, in order to make it in with him, you got to fulfill the thing that he created you for. If you come down here or been on this earth all this time and you leave this earth without creating the thing or doing the thing that God created you for, you ain't making it in. That's just the God's honest truth. You gotta fulfill the thing that the problem that God created you for. There are certain people or certain things or there's stuff that's assigned to you. Certain problems that's assigned to you that you're supposed to deal with. Only you can deal with it in the way that you know how to deal with it, because God placed the answer on the inside of you. Only you can talk to a certain person. I could be saying something to my children, saying the same thing somebody else saying, but they can hear it from somebody else because it hit different. They comment with me, they comfortable with me, but let somebody else come and tell them the same thing I say, and it'll catch their attention, because it takes away all the tradition, it takes away all the commonality. So they begin to hear that individual. Sometimes when you hearing your parents says want, you ain't hearing, the people that you're familiar with. It's in one ear and out the other. But let somebody come around the corner and say the exact same thing, and it might catch your attention. So don't let the enemy tell you that you can't fulfill your purpose, that God placed you on this earth, because God is the one that can redeem the time. He can either give you time, or he can make so much stuff happen in your life to where he'll give you'll have a suddenly. You'll do what you got to do, and that thing will come to pass before you know it. So he knows your heart. He knows if you seriously want to, serve him and do what he requires of you to do. So he can redeem the time. Anyway, let's get back to, we're going to go verse 3. Now Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. So let's go to verse 4. Hear, O our God, for we are despised, and turn the reproach upon their own head, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity. In other words, they don't believe that the Jews can do with this daunting task. They don't believe that it can be completed. They don't believe they don't have the endurance. But here in verse 4, we have Nehemiah praying. What he do? He remembering God. He going back to God and say, Lord, you gave me this vision. You told us to do this. You started this. You bring this to pass. We got these people sitting up here despising us, mocking us, coming against us, talking about us, making us look like, like we fools or whatever. You the one started this. You the one did this. So turn, and turn their reproach on their own head, put it back in their face. For they provoke thee to, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity. Turn it back on them. Give them a taste of their own medicine. Send them somewhere else. Show them, that they don't know what they're talking about. That's what he's basically praying. Verse 5, and cover not their iniquity, and let not their sin be blotted out from before thee. For they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. Expose them. Expose their dirt, expose their iniquity, expose their sin. While they sitting there, mocking us and, hitting at us and talking about we can't do and can't do that, Expose the plank, and they trying to expose the plank in our eye, but they can't see past the log in their eye. Expose what they're doing. Expose their faults. They being judgmental on us. Expose them. He going to God and remembering God, because God knew God is the only one that can fight the battle. God gave the vision. God, when he gives you a vision, he ain't going to tell you all that's going to come with it. He ain't going to tell you all who's going to be for you or who's going to be against you. He ain't going to tell you all the trials and tribulations that you're going to go through. He'll tell you the end of a thing, because that's how he works. It's like an engineer. He works from the back of the end of it, and back to the front of it. So an engineer sees the finished product, and then he works backwards trying to figure out how he gets to that point, or how he gets, like going out working on cars that's already completed. Say I want to work on my Cadillac, and I go out there in the junkyard and I find an ATS. Say I want to figure out how to dismantle the head or whatever. I see the finished product, and then I go in and start tearing it down, figuring out, what comes here. That way, when I work backwards, I can put it back together, or put it back the way it was and have the finished product. We do things opposite. We want to, see the beginning, and then we want to go from there and make it up as we go along. But God sees the end of a thing, the expected end, the end of the matter. And if we learn to see it as God sees, we could be so much further, so much productive. Say we want to be, we want to have a business by this time next year. We start putting things in place. First, we need to know what the business is going to look like, what it's going to have. What are the components? What are the departments? What kind of services it's going to have? And then when we get that, then we find out how we're going to supply those services, where are the resources at. And we start piling on those, resources. And, like I said, we gather everything together so that we have our finished product. That's how you work backwards. So God, like I say, sees the end of a thing. And we need to learn to see the end of a thing. When over their iniquity, he's turning it back in their face. For they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. When you make people mad, they don't want to work. They be in their feelings, they be in their emotion, and it slows down production. It slows down progress. When you're happy and you're doing the will of your Father, you just, happy and you just getting everything done. But when you got negative emotions coming at you and people coming at you and stress and high cortisol levels and everything going on in your flesh, then it tires you out. It slows down production. Because it's designed to make you stop. It's designed to cease the project. The enemy comes against you to cease the project. So as long as he can get you in a negative emotion, get you depressed or anxious or anything like that, as long as he can get you, in your flesh, he can try to get your flesh to be sluggish and slothful and eventually cease the project. Number 6, so built we the wall, and the wall was joined together unto half thereof, for the people had a mind to work. They went on and continued. They continued doing what they needed to do. Despite what was going on around them, they went on and continued because they had a mind to work. That means they set their mind, they set their face to do what they was going to do, regardless of what was coming at them. They wanted the end result more than they wanted what was around them. That's a nugget for somebody. You got to want the end result more than what you see around you. In order to be successful, in order to be, to be prosperous in this life, in order to receive the blessings and walk in the favor of God, you got to see the blessings and the favor of God more than you see the trials and the tribulations that's before you. You got to see the abundance, the life and life more abundantly before you, before you, and not pay attention to what's all going around you. Maybe you don't have what you want, but, you're getting there. I see myself as a licensed therapist. The end result, I see myself. I operate as a licensed therapist. I fix my face, my stature. I'm confident in what I do, in what I know. I study the diagnosed codes. I read them. They come off my tongue like the word of God does. I can see somebody and know exactly what's going on because I study my craft. So I am a licensed therapist, even though I don't see the paper before me. I see what God has called me to be. And I operate in what God has called me to be. Now, there are some things that I have to do to where I can't sign off on the dotted line myself right now. But in representing my clinical, I still operate as if I am that person, as if it's my name being signed on the dotted line. Because if I would put my name on the dotted line, then I know I'm doing her a great favor. Because, a great service. Because, I just don't put out any old kind of work just to get, an intern number. I give my best. I do my best. I give the same respect as if it was my name on the dotted line versus her name. So we got to get to, some being able to respect people and, treating them as though we treat us, as though we, do unto others as you do unto you, have them do unto you. We got to learn to treat others as if I'm borrowing somebody's car and I'm not going to run around to the lowest gas, watered down gas and put that and replace their gas with that watered down gas. No, I'm going to replace their gas with the high end gas that I put in my car because I'm no respecter of person. You got to treat people how you want to be treated. That's a whole nother message. But I'm just saying, we got to learn to show up when we are walking in the ways of others, when other people are covering us. And we got to learn to show up when we walking and, it's on ourselves. We got to do everything unto God as if our name is on the dotted line or if it's somebody else's name on the dotted line. If we in an organization or whatever, and we're going through doing that organization, we ought to act and promote like that organization is our organization. Like we the CEO, we ought to act and respect that organization as if it was our neck on the line, that we the CEO. So that way we would show up and do what we supposed to do. We ain't gonna just give any old thing. We will give our best. Wake up every morning, give our best. And then eventually one day your name will be on and you will be the CEO of that company or maybe your own company or whatever. But how you show up every day determines, your lifestyle. Whether you're going to have life or life more abundantly. You got to show up. You got to be intentional. So, what was we at? Verse 6, they had a mind to work. Number 7, but it came to pass that when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabians and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were made up and that the breaches began to be stopped, then they were very wroth. We talk about the project is finished. The project is done already. And when they heard it, the people that was coming against them, the people that was despising them, the people that was mocking them, the people that was trying to, sabotage them, when they heard that it was done, that everything was coming together and they were sealing the breaches so that nothing could come in and destroy it, they felt some type of way. When they see what you've been saying all along, the favor of God on your life all along, when they see your prophecy has come to pass, has been fulfilled, they feel some type of way. Because number one, they couldn't stop it. And number two, you got God. They don't have God. Most have that form of godliness. Most preaching grandiose like they have God and God, they walk in the spirit of God and they so holier than thou, but there's no evidence. There's nothing. It's just all talk. But Like, there's no faith. There's no evidence. There's no substance. So, like I say, when they heard that the walls of Jerusalem were made up and the breaches began to be stopped, they were very wroth. They were very angry. Verse 8, and conspired all of them together to come and to fight against Jerusalem to hinder it. They started sabotaging. They started trying to do things to keep them from sealing the breaches. They didn't want the breaches sealed up to keep them out. They wanted the breaches open so they can slither in and do whatever they wanted to do. They wanted to tear it down. They wanted to bring reproach upon the Israelites again, upon the Jews. They wanted to bring reproach upon God's people. Why? Because God showed favor. God blessed them. God brought it to pass. So they were upset. You know, they told them what they were going to do, and God made it come to pass, and they were upset because they got the thing that they wanted. I don't know who that's for. Some people just coming against you just because God said he was going to do what he did, and he did what he said he was going to do. Some people are angry and upset just because you blessed and they not. They ain't got nothing against you. They upset because you walking in truth. They just upset. They want to come against you and sabotage everything against you. They want to spend their time trying to come against you and sabotage you versus using that time and that energy to go off and get the favor and blessings of God for themselves, to walk upright before God for themselves. Look at that. Some people would rather spend their time gossiping and talking about you and look at that Cadillac, well, who she thinks she is, versus doing something that would set them in a position to get their own Cadillac, to live life more abundantly for themselves, to get to God for themselves. There are some people that feel that that time is worth more spent, better spent, talking or tearing you down than building their own self up. I'm telling you, mental illness is real. I get paid for that. Verse 9, nevertheless, we made our prayer unto our God and set a watch against them day and night because of them. Some of us are sitting around waiting on the favor of God to just fall upon our life, and we ain't got to do nothing. We ain't got to fight for nothing. You know, God just going to give it to us. We going to pray, and, you know, faith without works is dead. That's what that means. You can have all the faith in the world, but if you don't get off your behind and do something to show that you have, you know, faith in your behavior is your heart. That means you put your heart into it. You get off your tail and you do something to bring it to pass. If God tells you that he going to give you a house, you need to start looking at your credit. If God tells you he going to give you a car, you need to start seeing how you can make money or the down payment. You need to do something to show that you believe God was going to do what he said he's going to do. He ain't going to drop it out the sky. If he do, when he get down here and knock you upside your head, you ain't going to be alive to experience it. So we got to use common sense. So whatever God told you to do, you need to sit there and look at what you don't have, what you need, and you need to get in position to receive. I don't know, like I said earlier, last week, I'm cleaning out the garage. I'm tossing stuff. I'm donating. I'm, clearing this house out, emptying it out. There ain't nobody but me and my daughter here. I don't know what God is making room for, but he's got me. It's like nesting. He's got me in a position. I'm getting ready to receive something. I don't know what, but I'm getting ready to receive something. And the problem I have with that is blessings don't come without problems. Blessings don't come without struggle. The birth of a child does not come without labor pains. So it's a season right now for me to be clearing out, making room for, getting in a position, a posture to receive from God. So I need to enjoy this moment, because whenever it show up, whenever it hit, I know I'm going to be in the throes of labor pains. I know there's going to be some type of struggle. Something I got to do. Unless I'm having a C-section. Like I said, Matthew, he came out. That was 18 hours of hard labor because the epidural didn't work. And they didn't believe me when I told them it didn't work. And when the man, because his head was too big, when the man had to cut me, and out of reflex, I kicked that doctor in his chest so hard, he said, well, I guess it didn't work. 18 hours of hard labor I went through birthing that child, pushing that child out. And the last 6 hours, well, I should say 18 hours of labor. The last 6 hours was hard labor because I had to push him out. And, he was all kind of, big head. Well, he's still big headed, but trying to come out of there. But I knew then, that it was going to be hard. My baby boy, because of the high risk and his shoulders is so broad and everything, they said they were going to have to do a C-section because there was no way I was going to be able to push him out. So Matthew was 4 pounds, 9.5 ounces. Marcus was 8 pounds, 9.5 ounces. So they did my first surgery, C-section. Out of all the car accident and everything I went through, I never had no surgery until the C-section came. So I had the C-section, and that went so smoothly. When I found out about Brianna, and I was, 7 months, and they told me that she was 6 pounds, I set the C-section myself. And I'm glad I did because she was my biggest baby. She was 10 pounds, 1 ounce. I know I'd passed out trying to birth that. So I set the C-section myself. We set the day and it got everything ready. Got time to go down there. We go down there and they started whatever, started my labor, broke my water, whatever. And she came out. So I didn't have to go through them labor pains no more like I did with Matthew. I bless God for that. But that was an easy, go through C-section. The hardest part of that was healing. Them staples or whatever they put on there, they catch on stuff and they hurt or whatever. And it take about a couple of weeks for them to heal. So, like I say, anytime God give you something or bless you something, it's going to be some struggle. It's going to be some trials and tribulations that you're going to have to deal with, to go through. You can't just have everything easy. If you do, I would check to see if it's God. I really would. So, like I say, God has me nesting. He's preparing, getting me in position, getting me in a posture to receive something, to receive a blessing from Him. Now, all blessings that God give, may not be blessings in our mind. It's whatever He wants, whatever He desires to drop in your lap because it's a tool or something that you're going to need. Or whatever. I don't know what it is He got going on, but it's been going on for a minute. And I feel a lot lighter, feel a lot freer, getting stuff up out of here. But I don't know. I know He's going to drop something in here. I just know. Because I signed my lease, and so I know I ain't moving. But God is He's opening up something, and He's finna bless me with something. Something I got to deal with. I don't know, maybe I'm a caretaker. I don't know what's going on. But He's about to do something in my home. I know because He got me focused on my home. Taking stuff out, getting rid of stuff, donating. Got Republic Service coming over here. Organizations coming here to pick stuff up. All that kind of stuff. Downsizing now. That stuff I should have been doing before I signed the lease. That way I could have moved. But He waited till after I signed the lease to tell me to start donating and getting rid of stuff. So everything is in God's timing. So that's how I know that He got me nesting. He finna drop something in here. This is a birthing process. So, like I say, He was very robbed. Okay. Where it's saying, conspired all of them to come and to fight against Jerusalem, to hinder it, stop sabotaging them. Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto God, talked to God, and set a watch against them day and night, which means that, they paid attention. They didn't stop working. They didn't stop being productive. They kept on the vision of God. They didn't allow the enemy or the adversary or whatever they was doing all around them to stop the building of the wall. They did whatever they had to do to keep moving. That's what a lot of people need to do. Stop procrastinating. Stop sitting down. Stop being negative. Whatever you do whatever you got to do to keep moving forward. Keep putting what Dr. Martin Luther King said. The way to get to the top of the stairs, it begins with the first step. If you get on the second step or the third step or the 17th step and you stop and you sitting there dealing with that, distracted, and whatever they got coming against you, you ain't gonna get to the top until you start moving again. Whatever comes, adversity or whatever's coming against you in your face, keep moving. However sometimes you got to crawl. Sometimes a soldier is wounded and he still got to keep moving. He's shot, wounded. He still got to keep going. Whether he got to crawl on the ground or whatever he got to do. But to keep moving. Keep your faith. Don't just give up your faith. Don't just, the very elect is being deceived. We losing a lot. A lot of them is falling away. It's a great falling away taking place going on because of all the stuff that we've seen. And, we didn't think we was going to see it. A pandemic, the book of Exodus was basically about the pandemic. And it's like, because we wasn't back there to see it, we didn't believe it or whatever. So it ain't like, history repeats itself. Ain't nothing new under the sun. So, whatever you see, whatever you go through, keep moving. No, this is the new norm. Ain't nothing going back to the way it was. It's not. But as long as you keep moving, you're going to get to the blessings of God. You're going to receive the favor of God, whether that be on this side or his side. I'm just saying, keep moving. Verse 10 said, and Judah said, the strength of the bearers of burdens is decayed, and there is much rubbish, so that we are not able to build the wall. I mean, the enemy gonna keep putting some stuff in front of you, gonna keep piling some junk in front of you, making it so hard that you can't keep building the wall. You're just gonna keep moving that stuff out the way. Keep moving and building. Keep moving and submitting. I saw people submit. I've been with people that were submitting as a child, but you got to do what you got to do to keep building the wall, to keep erecting the wall. The enemy gonna throw some things at you. The adversary is always gonna bring something to you, put something in your face. People gonna talk about you. They talked about Jesus. People gonna gossip about you. People gonna try to hinder your progress. People gonna tell you lies, deception, everything, try to get you on the wrong path and all of this. But you got to keep moving. You got to keep doing whatever you got to do to keep laying brick by brick. Keep the foundation clear so that you can keep laying brick by brick. As long as your foundation is God and you remain in the faith and you remain with God, it's going to come to pass. You just got to believe it and receive it in your heart. Whatever he told you that he was going to do, you got to just keep yourself in a position, in a posture to receive, to hear him, to keep building, keep pounding away, keep doing what you got to do. Whatever the adversary throw at you, throw it back. I don't know, he might get me in trouble for that. But I like to throw it back or whatever. But like I say, keep moving. Do whatever you got to do to keep moving. But stay in God. I don't want to say it like that. Stay in God. I'm human. I get in my flesh too. But, God will tap me on the shoulder and I'll come back or whatever. But I'm saying stay in God. Do whatever you got to do to stay in God. Matter of fact, I got to tell you the word. The word say forgive quickly. You got to stay in God. And I tries to do that. Most of the time I do that. And then there are some times that, he catches me. Because sometimes the enemy will do something through somebody, a deception, and I'll think on it. I ain't perfect. I ain't trying to be, make an excuse. I'm just telling you the real, how I am. I know the word. Woe to those who know. I do know the word. And I thank God for the grace that, he still keeps me breathing and everything when I do experience those times. But when people come against me, I'm just as human as everybody else. Ain't making no excuses. But I wasn't saved always. I feel some type of way. you can't come at me. You just can't come at me and not expect me. I got a mouth on me. He gave it to me. And he's still working on it. And I'm allowing him to work on it. But I'll say some things. I'll put some stuff in order. And I'll prophesy. And I will shake the dust. But that's what I'm saying. Make sure you keep moving. Make sure you stay in God. I get that righteous indignation, that holy anger. And sometimes it sit with me for a while. But keep moving. Forgive quickly. I'm just telling you what the truth. Forgive quickly. But some people are going to get on your nerves. Some people are going to do some things. Some trials and tribulations going to come in your life to where it's going to take the wind out of you sometimes. And you're going to be like, where'd that come from? And you have to think. You know, you have to literally remember God. Because there are some shocking things that has happened to me in my lifetime that I didn't expect to happen from certain people. And I've had to take a step back to save my own self, to maintain my own soul salvation, to stay encouraged in God. We all human. Nobody is better than the other. Nobody. And the enemy comes at me hard because I know the word. Not saying he don't come hard at anybody else. But he can't just come. He can't bamboozle me with some little old something. He can't bamboozle me to get drunk or, you know, smoke cigarettes or nothing. He gotta come with me with the big dogs. Because he know I'm not falling for that stuff. He gotta bring some hard stuff, like some emotional trauma, some emotional something. He gotta bring something that's gonna trigger me to get a rise out of me. And the most thing that get a rise out of me is people that pick on people that you are, I ain't gonna say less than, but they're not as blessed, or maybe they don't know as much, or, you know, the bully picking on the little kid, you know, that kind of thing, you know, gets on me. And the other thing that gets on me that triggers me is men living off women. I can't stand that. I can't stand no narcissistic spirit. I can't stand no narcissistic spirit beating a woman, low self-esteem, telling she ain't gonna be nothing. We had one come through last weekend at my job. I can't stand it. Because, you know, just that enemy, that devil just talking her down because he insecure. He don't feel nothing by himself. You know, he done been through some trauma in his life and he taking it out on her or whatever. It ain't right. That's why a lot of people do what they do, is because they've been through some things themselves. Yeah, on that Save Sexy and Single podcast, it's been requested that I talk about sexual abuse. So I'm going to do a series or talk, you know, I don't know if it's going to be a series. I'm going to do an episode on sexual abuse and what that really means in the spirit realm as well. Because you got to realize when you have sex with somebody, you take on their demons and their generational demons. So if you are sexually abused, not only are you not consenting to that, but you don't know exactly what you know, all that evil and everything, you know, is being taken into play, into consideration. And what gets to me is, what really gets a rise out of me is, you know, we had a lot of people on the news talking about molesting boys, men molesting boys. So we got all these men projecting all their generational curses into these men, and we got a whole different culture arising. You know, and it's not so much just because of that culture. You know, there are people that want to be gay or homosexuality and they haven't had any sexual abuse or anything. You know, that's, you know, there's documents and statistics that some people are just born, liking men, liking the same sex. But for a man to violate a young man like that, he's giving all them generational curses, his spirit into that young man, and destroying his everything, his manhood, his demeanor, his spirit, his personality. It's something. Like I said, we're gonna tackle that topic. It's of a trauma. We're gonna tackle that topic on that Save Sexy and Single podcast. So if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. That way you don't miss it. But yeah, we're gonna tackle the hard topics over there, because I'm getting backlash over here. So that's my turn in the cheek. It's got its own channel. Now, I ain't going to bend over and turn no cheeks. But it's got its own channel. That's what we talk about, the things that's all swept up under the rug. Things that people, really don't want to hear about. But things that people are sitting around hurting because while it's being swept up under the rug, it's not being addressed. It's not being taken care of. So that's what we're going to be talking about over there. Like I said, it's the Save Sexy and Single channel podcast. I left a description in the last week's, and I think I got it set to where it'll leave a link this week too, or I'll leave the box at the bottom, or how you can click on like and subscribe that channel so that you can be updated on that if that is interesting to you. Also, my Instagram is on there to that channel. When I do certain things or events, which I'm planning on doing, with Women's Expo and all of that. So, yeah, go check out that, because that is where it's not so much the world, but you got to know how to be a believer and still live in the world. You got to know how to be Christ-like and live in the world, but not be of the world. Everybody talk about killing the flesh. Common sense. Take a bullet to your head, that'll kill the flesh. But it's not about killing the flesh. It's governing the flesh. It's being able to control the flesh. God wouldn't have gave us the flesh if we didn't need it. I'm going to let that set right there. Like I said, don't forget to check out the Save Sexy Single podcast, that channel. Like and subscribe to that channel so that you can get the, those topics. About, dating, being a believer and how to live in this shell, this body as a believer, as Christ-like. Okay, so let's go to number 10. And Judah said, the strength of the bearers of burdens is decayed, and there is much rubbish, so that we are not build a wall. We just talked about that. That, God, the enemy is going to put stuff in your way. He going to make it so, he going to slow you down. He going to make it so you get tired out and you don't want to do it no more. You don't want to be, you're going to be picking up trash and holding your sword. You got so many things going on in life. Stress coming from all sides in your life because the enemy is throwing all, because he's trying to slow you down. He's trying to stop you. He's trying to make you tire you out. You got to have endurance. You got to get past that. Don't let the devil win. You just got to keep going. Verse 11, and our adversary said, they shall not know, neither see, till we come in the midst among them and slay them and cause the work to cease. So now they're talking about killing people. They want to go talk about slaying the Jews and getting over on the Jews. They coming against them physically because they couldn't stop them, any other kind of way. They couldn't talk them out of it. Now they want to come lay hands on them and, have their way with them and seize them, maybe put them in captivity or whatever they got to do. But they talk about killing them, trying to cease the project because they don't want this project to come to pass. They don't want the vision that God has to come to pass. There are people in your life that are so mad and upset that you are so blessed that they want to lay hands on you. They want to stop you from doing. They want to stop. There are people who can't stand the sight of you just because you're blessed. We so busy in life, so distracted with the things and the cares of this world to where we really don't see that. But if you sit back and observe the emotion and the facial expressions of certain people, you can tell who for you and who against you. You can walk by somebody that can't stand you, and look at them, and they got a look on their face like you just disgusted. They can't stand it. If they are living a life that is miserable and they just can't get over, they just can't get ahead, they're not going to look at you and smile and be happy for you. No, they're going to look at you and can't stand you. They want to snatch the wig off of your head. They want to blow the car up that you drive, simply because they're not living the best life like you are. It's the truth. There are people like that. Why? Because their life is so miserable. They are not happy in their own skin. Their spirit is not happy in their own skin. Their spirit is not in connection with God. Their spirit is full of evil. Their heart is full of evil. They've been hanging out in the flesh, hanging out with the enemy, hanging out with the adversary. Satan is their God. They've been, in the works of the flesh, they've been doing fleshly things. And they just can't get ahead. They can't win for losing. They live in a lie. One lie changes into another lie. They just trying to get ahead, and they trying to get ahead with lies because God ain't moving in their life. God is the only one to give the increase. So they're not increasing at all. So when you come by with your accolade and your degrees or your, blessings, and you want to share with everybody else, they can't stand you. Why would they be happy for you when they live in a life that is not pleasing to them? Misery loves company. They're not going to be happy for you. So they're going to want to lay hands on you. They're going to want to kill you. They're going to want to stop. They want to stop by any means necessary. They want to stop your progress. They don't want you to succeed. Because why? Because they're not succeeding. That's why. Verse 12. And it came to pass that when the Jews which dwelt by them came, they said unto us 10 times, from all places whence ye shall return unto us, they will be upon you. Verse 13. Therefore said I in the lower places behind the wall, and on the higher places, I even set the people after their families, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. He's setting up people to watch. Half work, half watch. They starting to come at, want to lay hands. They want to kill some people now. So now we got to stop half the progress. Stop, half of them stop building the wall. Half of them stop being productive and go watch. Because that's needed. That's much necessary. While, go protect everybody around. Those, we need guards on deck. We need some, prayer warriors. We need, to watch and pray. We need some to do that. So while the others are still laying bricks, mortar, they still doing what they need to do to build the wall. The wall, the production is not stopping. It's not ceasing. It may have slowed down because we don't have as many hands on deck doing that. But we had to take some hands off of that to go up on deck to watch the adversary that's coming behind us to kill us, to stop us to cease the progress of God. Are we willing to do that? Are we willing to stop doing what we're doing, the production of something, and go protect our brother and sisters back for the greater good of the community? To do what we need to do? To keep as long as we keep laying the bricks or whatever? Sometimes you got to stop being in the crowd to go out and protect the crowd. Or there's some people that just got to be, their hands got to be in everything. And because their hands got to be in everything, ain't nobody on deck watching. Ain't nobody praying. Ain't nobody, they all in the flesh. They all thinking, leaning to their own understanding. They just want to do things their way. They got to have their hand in the pot. Then you got those that's always holding the bag. They don't want to let nothing come through the bag. unless they know about it, unless they dishing it out. And 9 times out of 10, they greedy. They ain't dishing it out. They'd rather have people die of hunger and thirst and do something else with the money than to feed the people, take care of the community. That's what they rather do. You have people like that. So, but Nehemiah, he was a good manager. He was a good leader. He was a good CEO. He knew to take some of the people off the wall. He needed to slow down production enough to have half of the production slow down. He needed to slow down the assembly line. Slow enough to where you got half still building the wall and the other half, maybe the men, with the bows and the spears and the swords, they on deck watching, taking off anybody's head that's trying to come and thwart the plan of God. You got to have some people watching. Everybody ain't holy. Everybody ain't for God. Everybody don't have God. Just because they coming in there sounding like God, that form of godliness, that don't mean God in their heart. Some of them full of the spirit of offense. They just coming in there to be nosy, to see what they can get into and what they can destroy, what they can have discord of, to tear it down. Ministry was going good. People were being blessed. Prophecies going along, being fulfilled. Ministry was growing. Truth came out. And those that they couldn't handle the truth was gone. Ministry started growing with those that could. And because the enemy wasn't at the forefront, some things took place and tore it down. That's what I'm saying. Everybody that come in there saying, Lord, Lord, is going to be with him. Is going to make it into heaven. That's scripture. You got to pay attention. You got to see evidence in their life. If you don't see no evidence, there's a reason for that. So, be careful who you connect with. Be careful who you got watching your back. Be careful of those that's got to be, on the front line. They got to be hands on deck all the time. They got to have their hands in it. They got to be the CEO all the time, doing everything, barking orders. They got to have things their way. Burger King, they got to, they always got to have their voice in it. They regardless of what you do or what you say, they're going to do what they want to do. They own God. They go into their own kingdom, which is hell, which is going to be with a lot of other people too. But be careful of those ones that can't listen to nobody. They just want to do what they want to do. Why? Because they want to do it. They don't even want to listen to God. They suffer and go through life suffering because they don't want to listen to God. They just want to listen to themselves and do what they want to do. They want to maneuver any and everything. They are not people. They can't. They don't have no social skills. They're not people persons. Let's say it like that. They've been to where they getting everything they want to get by themselves, doing everything by themselves because they're only one voice. Ain't nobody else with them. But you put them in a setting of other people, a group of other people, where they have a voice too. And if they can't get their way, they got a problem. They don't want to be there. They're not team players. They want you to follow them, but they're not team players. So be careful of that. Be wise of that. Test the spirit by the spirit. Let me see. Anyway, like I say, Nehemiah managed it all. And he had people on deck. He had people on the wall, with their swords and their spears, sat around protecting their families. And some of them, what they was building as they had the sword beside them, They laying cement and brick and mortar, and they got their sword. They got to fight and build at the same time. So he had all of this going on. So you need to watch and pray. Don't forget to watch and pray. God wouldn't have said that if it wasn't necessary. God fights our battles, yes, but he fights our battle through these hands. So if people are coming against you, oh, God got it, God got me, he going to need you. You'll have your attention. He going to need to use your hands at some time to fight the battle. It's just he's fighting it, not you. It's coming out of his spirit and not off of your heart. You know, it ain't leaning to your understanding. It's leaning to his understanding. So, 14, and I looked up and rose up and said to the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, be not ye afraid of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. Fight for your people. You don't be afraid. You got to fight. You got to fight your way through this. This is fight for your family. You can't let nothing just come up against your family, come up against you. You can't let nothing just come stop the progress or the favor of God in your life. When you do that, the enemy is won. The enemy is won. You got to keep going. You got to keep fighting. You can't just let the enemy do something to stop the plan of God. The very elect is being deceived. And he's throwing stuff, saying stuff that ain't even scripture, just sound like scripture, and people just going along with it. And they being deceived because why? They don't sit down and read their own Bible. They don't know that God didn't say that. It sounds like surely. The enemy gonna put that spin on it. Anything to get your ear. Verse 15. And it came to pass when our enemies heard that it was known to us, and God had brought their counsel to naught, that we returned all of us to the wall, every one unto his work. So when the enemy found out that they knew about it, but it didn't come to pass, God had brought their counsel to naught, it didn't come to pass. Everybody returned to the wall. Everybody returned to the work. Production started going, as it was. It had to be slowed down for a little bit, but God took care of it, and then everybody returned to work. Verse 16, and it came to pass that from that time forth, that the half of my servants wrought in work, and the other half of them held both the spears, the shields, and the bows, and the habergeons, and the rulers were behind all the house of Judah. That's when they was, building with a sword on their side. They didn't stop production. They kept their sword and their spears and everything with them. They had a spirit of discernment. They was on watch. Sometimes you got to be productive. You got to be doing the work of the Lord. You got to be planning and be diligent and strategic and completing his plan. But you also got to be watch. You got to be mindful of that one that's next to you. You don't know if the one that's next to you might be your friend or your enemy. Might be Judas. Judas was a disciple, but you don't never know who the enemy is going to get into the heart of. Judas was a disciple. And it says Satan entered into his heart. And it wasn't until Satan entered into his heart that caused Judas to do what he did, to lead the crucifixion of Christ. So your best friend could be going through something. You don't know what's going on. So you got to watch your best friend too. You got to watch anybody around you, anybody that's beside you, anybody in your corner. You always got to watch and pray, because the enemy can come in to, he gets into the ones that's close to you. He don't use a stranger, because a stranger don't look like he belong. A stranger don't look like he fit. Remember, he was a serpent in the Garden of Eden. Why? Because he felt like he belonged. Serpents belong in the garden, to where that's why he was okay with Eve. And she was sitting out there talking to a serpent, because it looked like he belonged. It looked like he was supposed to be there. He came in the form of something that was familiar in that area, to be in that environment. Had he came as a dragon like he did in the book of Revelation, that Eve wouldn't have been talking to it. The enemy comes in the form of what is pleasing to you. Something that looked like belongs. Something that looked like is an answered prayer for you. That's how the enemy arises. I just went through something where, because I didn't have the help, the help. We got to hold up our leaders. That's what that young man was talking about at the revival that night. You got to be able to hold up Moses' hands and hold up, the cross for Jesus. You got to be able to help hold up the leaders. If you ain't holding up the leaders and they get tired and weary and begin to fall, the enemy can send anybody in. And when the enemy send anybody in, then all hell and havoc break loose or whatever. So the enemy waits and watch till the leader or the head gets weary. And then when the head gets weary and tired and, dealing with their own stuff, that's when the enemy can creep in and tear down a whole mess. But nobody wants to take the fall. Nobody wants to put into their part that they wasn't trying to help the leader. They was off doing their own thing or whatever. They just want to blame the leader. So it's like the pastor can't be wrong. I said that before. I'm not going to go on that rant again. But when the leader, say they had got to Nehemiah, then the whole plan would have been thwarted, because Nehemiah would have been gone, and then who would have been there to govern everything, to give the vision that God gave him? God gave Nehemiah the vision, but he put the bits and pieces, in other people's minds and hearts. So they knew what to do. They knew what part of the wall that they was going to build. They knew what gate they was going to build. They knew the fountain that they was going to restore. They knew each part, what they could do. And, their portion. They knew what to do. But they had to hear from the voice of the prophet, the voice of God. That, the one that the vision came through, which was Nehemiah. Had Nehemiah been taken out, the wall wouldn't have been built. You got to hold up your leaders. They not only dealing with the governing of the people, but they also dealing with the wiles of the devil in their own house too. And if you are not being a blessing or trying to help alleviate some of that stress, you're adding to it. Maybe the enemy using you. Maybe Satan done got in you and causing you to bring the enemy the leader down. So we got to pay attention. We got to hold up our leaders, because like I say, they're human too. They're fleshly too. They live in a flesh suit as well. They not so holier and thou that nothing comes to them, like the enemy can't get to them. The enemy is coming for the head. Just like on a football team. I like that revelation. All the members is out there, and they all protecting the quarterback. And most of the time when I see the quarterback on these teams, the quarterback is the smallest thing there is. The smallest person there is. The littlest man there is on the team. Everybody else got the big, shoulder pads, I call them, and big pads, and they look like big people. And the quarterback is so small. He's look like maybe half the size of any team member on the field. So the enemy is coming for the head. Because if you cut the head off, you done destroyed everything. The body just falls. The body can't work without the head. That's a revelation. There are some bodies and entities and organizations without no head. And that's the reason why they're not growing. They're not doing anything. They're not impacting the community. They ain't doing nothing but paying the rent. There's a lot of entities that ain't got no head. And then there are other entities that's got a head, but the head ain't got the voice of God, the mouth of God. So it's not growing. Because like I say, God gives the increase. There's a lot of churches that went bankrupt. A lot of church buildings across the United States alone that are up for sale. God is shutting doors. And I believe it's on purpose, because Jesus, the only time he went in the synagogue was to teach. The rest of the time he was out with the multitude. If you can't find a way to assist your community outside of four walls and air conditioning, then you ain't got no business being in leadership. Just to sit up and have fellowship and potluck, I ain't gonna get back on that rant. But like I say, you got to be able to uphold your leader. You got to make sure your leader is covered. You got to make sure, because, you know, they dealing with not only your stuff, but their own stuff too. That's why they're the leader. So they hear from God. Anyway, verse 17, they which build it on the wall, and they that bear burdens with those that laid it, everyone with his hands wrought in the work, and the other one hand held on a weapon. Like I said, they was building, the production was going, but they swords of their weapons was right next to them, right by them. You got to be able to discern the spirit. You can't just go along like God got your back. There are people that are falling by the wayside. There are people that the enemy is infiltrating and using to bring God's people down, God's kingdom down. And it's more so now than ever before, because we're seeing stuff more now than ever before. So you got to watch not only your sister, your brother, your mother, your father. You got to watch the people all around you. You got to watch your friend, your church, the deacon. You got to watch everybody. Verse 18, for the builders, everyone had his sword girded by his side, and so builded. And he that sounded the trumpet was by me. You know, you got to have somebody call it sounding out. Somebody that's willing to go ahead, and if something ain't going right, or something ain't being done in the will of God, somebody got to be a shout out. Somebody got to be a snitch or whatever to say, hey, watch over here. Here's this one coming. This one doing. You can't just let any and everything happen in the body of Christ. Because if you let the devil or the enemy have his way in the body of Christ, he going to keep doing it. He ain't going to never stop. The only way the enemy going to stop is if you stop him. You got to say something. You know, we can have what we say. You can, and don't be a voice for the enemy either. When you sitting there, glorifying the enemy and not glorifying God. So the builders, they was by them, you girded by his side with their swords, and they also had somebody looking to sound the trumpet. So when the trumpet sounded, you know to stop, put your brick down, put your mortar down, grab your weapon. It's time to fight. Verse 19, and I said unto the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, the work is great and large, and we are separated upon the wall, one far from another. The work, they all over the place. They far from another. Verse 20, in what place therefore ye hear the sound of the trumpet, resort ye thither unto us. Our God shall fight for us. When you hear the trumpet, put your stuff down and gather together. Come together. Don't nobody need to be spread all far out. You gotta be where you can have protection. Some security. Somebody to watch your back. We all laboring in this thing, and the wall, we being productive, and the wall is expanding, the wall is growing. But if you hear the trumpet, you got to stop, throw down what you're doing, and get back to your people. Get back to together. Get back, y'all got to come together, and God gonna take care of the rest. So verse 21, so we labored in the work, and half of them held the spears from the rising of the morning till the stars appeared. Half of them they were on watch. They had on their weapons. And, half of them worked, and half of them held their weapons, watching, ready to fight. Verse 22, likewise at the same time said I unto the people, let everyone with his servant lodge within Jerusalem, that in the night they may be a guard to us and labor on the day. So he let some of them go to sleep in the lodge, in the hotel or whatever, as you will, in Jerusalem. Some of them got their rest. You can't just keep doing and fighting and not take your rest. You got to be able to have peace to be able to rest at night and believe that God is going to take care of you, that God is going to provide for you, that God is going to watch over you while you sleep. So, and God watches over you through the people, through the ones that had the weapons. So while they're out there watching, you need to be sleeping. You got to be with people that you can trust, that's actually going to do what they say they're going to do. They ain't going to go to sleep and then they're going to come in, they're going to let something come in there and take your head off. Or they're going to let something come in there and bamboozle you. I've had a lot of that go on with people in my life, because they down low jealous or whatever, calling on them for help, and they want to come in and take over, stuff like that. So you got to make sure that you're around people that you trust. You got to discern the spirit. Test the spirit by the spirit. If the spirit don't walk and talk and look like you, like God, the spirit of God in you, I wouldn't trust it. In order to know that spirit, you got to know that person in outer court, inner court, and holy of holies. As far as holy of holies, intimacy. Intimacy is not sex. Intimacy is not going to bed. You got to learn to, make love with your clothes on. Intimacy is knowing about that person, knowing the person's heart, knowing how they think, being able to conversate, communicate, and share, insights and thoughts and ideas, with that person. And, you get to know a person by what they will do and what they won't do through intimacy. Like I said before, intimacy is not sex. That's just me, you looking into me, seeing my heart, see what I think, what I'm made of, what I'm all about. Sex is just flesh rubbing together. That's all it is. And, it may produce babies or whatever, but you can have sex with somebody you don't know. And just because you having sex with an individual don't mean you're going to get to know them. So intimacy ain't got nothing to do with sex. That's just extra recreational activity or whatever. For reproduction or whatever. To grow your nation. That's all that is. There's a lot of people put too much into sex. You cannot get to know a person just by having sex. That's why it's so easy for men to go drop a seed or release some stress with women and never care nothing about them. There's no emotional connection. It's just a release. That ought to bless somebody right there. It's just a release. They don't think nothing about you. Where women are emotional, they receive that release, and for the next days or hours, they thinking about that man, because that man is running around all up in their spirit. They all in love with the man, and the man going on to the next. Pay attention. Anyway, so you got to be around people that you trust. So somebody that you can go to sleep at night while you can trust that they're going to be on watch. They're going to be on the tower watching your back. They're going to be on deck, securing the fortress or whatever. Verse 23. So neither I, nor my brethren, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard which followed me, none of us put off our clothes, saving that every one put them off for washing. This means that in shifts, some slept in the day, some slept in the night. But whoever slept in the day worked at night. Whoever slept at night worked in the day. They was all in shifts. The only time that they took their clothes off and rested, got comfortable, was when they were bathing. Sometimes in life, you just got to keep pounding the pavement. You just got to keep at it. How bad do you want it? You can't just stop and get comfortable, because the moment you get comfortable, the enemy slithers in and comes and distracts you and does something. Like I say, I got comfortable with some people, and they came in and did what they did, and after the fact, I found out they wasn't who they said they was. So be careful who you get comfortable with. Don't get comfortable with until the project is done. You got to be productive. When you're on the assembly line, you got to be on the line doing the work. When you're resting, you're resting. But this type of rest, when you're trying to get something, when you're in a fight for your life, when you're trying to, get ahead, you got to keep pushing. They only took their clothes off except for washing. They pulled their clothes off to wash them. If they wasn't washing clothes, they was in the same clothes. They wasn't thinking about being fashionable. They wasn't thinking about their threads and what they gonna wear and what they, they wasn't thinking about that. They wasn't thinking about the cares of the world or their flesh. They was thinking about the wall. They was thinking about continuing the work, fulfilling the vision that God called them to fulfill. Their mind was on the project, on the production. Their mind was on the vision and not themselves. So, yeah, you're going to be around some people that's going to stink. You're going to be around some people, that, can't, it's not going to be pretty. You're going to be around some people that, but as long as they serious and their mind is stuck to God, you're going to be around some people that's got bad attitude, or some people that you ain't going to like because, they're trying to teach you discipline. They're trying to show you something. And especially the Millennium X, they so disrespectful. They don't want to, listen to the elders. They don't want to do nothing like that. So you're going to be around some people that's going to rub you the wrong way, that you can't stand, that you don't want to hear. But as long as the vision of God is going forth, maybe you ought to trust it. As long as they working in the vision with you, and it's going forth, maybe you ought to trust it. Maybe that's God giving you constructive criticism. Maybe that's God taking some stuff off of you. But if they going against you and they trying to take something from you and they just trying to make a name for themselves and be seen, they ain't went to no college, got no degrees to make a name for themselves. They just trying to find a platform and make a name for themselves and build a name for themselves. The name for the people, they ain't for the community. They just trying to line their pockets. Especially if they begging all the time. Always, can I have this? Can you give me this? Bless this. We ought to give. He said give. He ain't say ask nobody. He said ask God. He didn't say ask people to give. When you want to ask somebody, ask God. And people just give. It's time out for being about the money. That's what was Judas' problem. He did all of that he did for 30 shekels of silver. And then when he got it, he threw it back. It wasn't worth the sorrow that he felt. And he didn't do anything until Satan entered into him. I said that before. So there was a breach in his heart. There was something that he was missing, that he wanted, that he desired. And instead of going to Jesus, who walked with him and talked to him about it and was blessed while he was with him, he set up an offense, which caused a breach in his heart. And the enemy used that breach to enter in. How many people sit up in that spirit of offense? I would leave them alone. Because you don't know at what given time the enemy is going to enter in, infiltrate their heart, and cause them to do something that they wouldn't normally do. And then, you be crucified. They come at you. They come all against you. Like I say, we can pray for them all day long. But God gives the increase. God may have rejected them. You can keep praying and keep moving. Pray without ceasing. Pray in motion. Learn to keep the production going. Learn to keep the vision of God. Keep moving forward. Whatever you do. Whatever vision God gives you, find a way to keep promoting, moving forward. No matter what the enemy throws at you. No matter what rise he tries to get out of you. Keep moving forward. I am so blessed with the vision that he has given me. I was talking to somebody today, and they, was blessed with it too. So it's what's needed. It's what's going on. So, like I said, we finished Nehemiah 4. Sometimes you're going to have to fight. Sometimes you're going to have to fight. I don't know what that noise is. That sound like a cat or something. But anyway, Sometimes you're going to have to fight for what you want. Sometimes you're going to have to fight for what God has given you. If it makes it too easy, then you ain't going to do what it takes to keep it. But if you got to fight and struggle with it, then you're going to do what you got to do to keep it. All that I have been through to try to become a licensed therapist, there ain't no way in the world I'm going to do something that's going to cause me to lose it after all this time. So he's built up strength. He's built up perseverance in me. You know, that I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to do what's right in order to be able to keep my license when I get it. So he's brought me a mighty long way. It's been a journey. But I have respect for the position because of all that I've been through and all that has come against me. So it didn't do nothing but make me better. It didn't do nothing but make me stronger. I was telling my clinical the other day that she was saying, "You so fast," you know, writing the paperwork and everything, the documentation. And I said, yeah, I got fast because, you know, people was having me do their work for them while they get the credit. And I learned to get fast. So I guess that was God training me how to be fast when he gives me the credentials for my own. He ain't going to be able to stop me then because I know how to be fast, get it done, and keep it pushing. I hope this bless you. Like I say, maybe you want to fight because you fighting for your blessing. So keep your sword on your side. Discern the spirits around you. Pay attention to who's around you. Pay attention if they're going to protect you or if they just going to be self-serving and, you know, self-righteous and protect themselves. Know what's around you. Anyway, y'all stay blessed.